The man in our house wears my father's face, but he's not my father. Before the trip, my dad's smile was the first thing you'd notice about him. It wasn't a big, flashy thing, but it was constant. It was a gentle, easy smile that lived in his eyes as much as on his lips. It was there when he was telling one of his awful jokes, when he was watching TV, when he was just sitting on the porch with a coffee. It was the baseline of our family, the quiet, reassuring signal that everything was okay. It's been 3 months since I've seen it, and I'm starting to forget what it truly looked like. It all started after his annual camping trip. Every autumn, for 1 week, he'd go solo camping up in Bridgers Hollow National Forest. He said it was his way of resetting his soul. My mom and I never worried. He was an expert woodsman, had been doing it for 20 years. This year, when his truck pulled into the driveway, I felt that familiar sense of relief. I ran out to meet him, ready for a bear hug and a story about a fish that was this big. But he just sat there in the truck for a long moment, staring at the house. When he finally opened the door, he looked fine. A little thinner, some new scratches, but physically okay. He gave me a brief, one-armed hug, his body stiff. There was no joke, no rumpling of my hair. And most importantly, there was no smile. His face was a placid, neutral mask. My mom came out onto the porch, her own smile ready, but it faltered when she saw his expression. "Long trip, honey?" she asked, her voice laced with a new uncertainty. "Long trip," he replied, his voice a monotone, and walked inside. We both chalked it up to exhaustion. We gave him his space, assuming the smile would return after a hot meal and a good night's sleep. It didn't. The first week was just quiet. Dad moved through the house like a guest. He ate the food my mom made without comment, his fork and knife moving with a mechanical precision. He'd sit in his favorite armchair in the evenings, but wouldn't turn on the game. He would just stare at the blank television screen for hours. The lack of his smile was the most jarring part. It was like a foundational brick had been removed from our home, and we were all trying to pretend we didn't feel the wobble. When I tried telling him a joke, he just looked at me with placid curiosity. His head tilted slightly, as if he were analyzing the concept of humor itself. There was nothing. My mom and I started talking in whispers when he wasn't in the room. "He just needs time," she'd say, trying to convince herself more than me. But our dog Buster, a golden retriever who had worshipped my dad, seemed to confirm our growing fears. Buster wouldn't go near him. He'd hide under the kitchen table, a low growl rumbling in his chest whenever my dad entered the room. My dad didn't seem to notice or care. An animal's instincts are pure, and Buster's instincts were screaming that the man in the house was a stranger. The change began to escalate in the second week. I found his camping gear in the garage, supposedly unpacked, but it was pristine. The tent was perfectly folded, the hiking boots had no mud on them. It looked like it had never left the garage. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I checked the GPS in his truck. According to the data, he had driven to Bridgers Hollow, but he hadn't parked at his usual trailhead. He'd driven deep down an old, unpaved service road. The GPS showed the truck stopping there, and then nothing. The data for the rest of the week was just that single, isolated point. The true terror began one night about a month after his return. I woke up thirsty around 3 a.m., and as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw a figure standing in my doorway. It was my dad, perfectly still. He wasn't moving. He was just watching me. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could feel the vacant intensity of his stare. I pretended to still be asleep, and after what felt like an eternity, he turned with a slow, deliberate motion and walked away. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He started doing other things. My mom found him in the garden one afternoon eating soil, just picking up handfuls of dark, rich earth and placing it in his mouth, chewing with that same joyless rhythm. When she screamed his name, he just looked at her, dirt smudged on his blank face, as if he didn't understand what was wrong. He stopped speaking almost entirely, unless spoken to, and his replies were always short, clipped, and in that same flat tone. The man who taught me how to ride a bike was gone. In his place was just a shape, an automaton going through the motions of a life it didn't understand. The breaking point for my mom was the photographs. She was putting together a new photo album. He walked in and stood over the table, looking down at the images. He picked one up, a picture of him from last Christmas, grinning ear to ear. He stared at it for a long time. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he brought the photo to his mouth and began to chew on it. My mom collapsed into tears, and for the first time, he reacted. He looked at her, and then at the half-eaten photo, and a look of something, not confusion, but analysis, crossed his features. He dropped the photo and walked out. We knew then we weren't dealing with trauma. We were living with something else. That night, I decided to go through his things from the trip one more time, and the bottom of his duffel bag, tucked into a torn lining, my fingers brushed against a small leather-bound notebook. His name was on the inside cover, his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first few entries were normal. Day 1, made it to the hollow. Day 2, found a great spot by the creek. But the entry for day 3 was different, the handwriting shaky. Left the main trail today, felt a pull, a strange draw towards the old ridges. Feels like something is waiting. On day 4, the writing was barely legible. Found a cave. It's not on any map. It's so dark, and the air is cold. There's a strange smell, like wet stone, and something sweet, like rot. I feel like I'm being watched. The last entry was just a few sentences scrawled across the page. It looks like a man. It came out of the cave. It just stands at the edge of my camp, watching. It doesn't blink. Its face is all wrong. It's trying to smile, but it doesn't have the right parts. I'm so tired. It's still watching me. I'm just going to rest my eyes for a minute. I dropped the journal, a sob catching in my throat. I looked up, and he was there, standing in the doorway of my room. He must have been there the whole time. The silence in the house was absolute. I held up the journal, my hand shaking. "What did you do to him?" I whispered. The thing wearing my father's face tilted its head. It looked at the journal, then back at me. It didn't speak. Instead, it did something far worse. It brought its hands up to its cheeks, its fingers pressing into the flesh. With a slow, grinding sound of muscle being forced into an unnatural position, it began to pull the corners of its mouth upwards. It was a grotesque parody of a smile. The skin stretched too tight, the lips didn't part, and the eyes remained as dead and empty as polished stones. It was the smile from the journal. I finally understood. My dad never came back from the woods. This thing did. This hollow imitation had put on my father's skin like a suit and walked out, leaving my real dad behind in that cold, dark cave. The thing in front of me wasn't my father. It was just his echo. My mom and I left that night. We packed a single bag and drove away, not even looking back. At the house where the creature stood in the window, watching us with that blank, horrifying face. Sometimes I still see him in my dreams, standing in the woods or in my doorway. He never speaks. He just watches, and he never, ever smiles. Or maybe he's still out there, waiting for someone else to wander into that cave and see the thing that's trying to smile.